Your grandparents didn't just survive winter, they ate well because they grew vegetables perfectly suited for cold, dark months. Before supermarkets and global shipping, families relied on hardy crops that thrived in frost, stored for months, and kept them nourished when nothing else would grow. Today, most of these winter workhorses are forgotten, but they shouldn't be. Number 15, Salsify, also called oyster root. Salsify was once the quiet winter hero of American homesteads, a spindly root so unassuming most kids mistook it for a weed. But your grandparents knew better. This vegetable, nicknamed oyster root, delivered creamy, delicate flavor long before coast-to-coast shipping made seafood commonplace. In a world where winter meals meant monotony and scarcity, Salsify brought luxury. But what made Salsify indispensable was its resilience. When other crops turned to mush in the first freeze, Salsify thrived. The colder the soil, the sweeter it became. Grandparents left it underground through December, January, even into spring, digging it up only when needed. No pantry, no cellar, no jars. Nature preserved it on its own. Families used it for everything: soups, fritters, and creamy sides. During the Great Depression, when budgets collapsed and protein was scarce, Salsify filled the gap. It grew in poor soil, demanded almost no care, and produced reliable harvests when nothing else would. Yet today, almost no one grows it. Grocery shelves replaced it with faster, prettier, easier vegetables. Salsify slipped away into the pages of old seed catalogs, forgotten, overlooked, misunderstood. But for your grandparents, it wasn't just food, it was winter survival on a plate. Number 14, parsnips. Parsnips look like pale, oversized carrots, but taste nothing alike. Your grandparents considered them winter gold because frost did not just fail to kill them, it improved them. Once the first hard freeze hit, the plant converted starches into natural sugars, turning a humble vegetable into sweet, earthy perfection. Pioneers and early settlers loved parsnips because they could be left in frozen ground all season long. While cabbages wilted and potatoes sprouted, parsnips patiently waited beneath the soil, ready to be dug whenever food supplies ran thin. No rodent could reach them, no moisture could rot them, and no cold could touch them. During harsh winters, especially before electricity and refrigeration, parsnips filled dinner tables when options were shrinking fast. They roasted them next to root vegetables, mashed them with butter, boiled them in stews, and even used them as sweeteners in winter desserts. They were versatile, dependable, and practically indestructible. But with industrial farming and flashy produce varieties taking over, parsnips vanished from everyday meals. Modern shoppers walked past them, not knowing they were passing a vegetable that once fed entire families through months of cold. Parsnips were not just a side dish, they were a lifeline. Number 13, Celeriac celery root. Celeriac isn't pretty, even your grandparents would admit that. Knobby, twisted, covered in tangled roots, it looks like something that belongs in folklore rather than a kitchen. But beneath that rough exterior lies one of the most flavorful and reliable winter vegetables they ever grew. Celeriac was prized for one main reason: storage. This bulb could sit in a root cellar from October until April without sprouting, shrinking, or losing its crisp texture. That made it priceless in a world where fresh produce was seasonal, not shipped in from across the country. Its taste was another secret weapon, richer, earthier, deeper than plain celery. Grandparents used it to elevate humble winter meals, soups, stews, mashed roots, roasted sides, and creamy slaws. In hard times when food needed to stretch, celeriac added flavor without requiring large quantities. European immigrants introduced the root to America, and for decades it held a quiet but essential place in homestead gardens. Farmers grew it not for looks, but for the practicality that ensured families stayed fed through long winters. Today, celeriac sits, forgotten, misunderstood, or ignored in seed catalogs. But in your grandparents' day, it was the ugly vegetable that kept plates full. Black radishes were the winter radish of choice for Old World farmers, their thick charcoal-colored skins acting like natural armor against cold and rot. Immigrants brought them to America because they stored longer than any other radish, sometimes lasting 6 months without losing their spicy kick. Your grandparents grew black radishes not just for flavor, but for health. These roots were an old-fashioned medicinal powerhouse. Families used them for cough syrups, digestion tonics, and flu remedies during cold months. Grated with honey, roasted with meats, or sliced thin in winter salads, black radishes were as much a part of medicine cabinets as they were kitchens. However, their greatest strength was durability. When other crops collapsed under freezing temperatures, black radishes kept going. They could survive droughts, survive frosts, survive pests, making them dependable during wartime and Depression-era shortages. Over time, milder vegetables replaced their bold flavor and modern tastes shifted away from strong, peppery roots. Grocery stores did not stock them, and slowly black radishes slid into obscurity. Yet in your grandparents' era, this tough, black-skinned root was not exotic. It was essential. Number 11, rutabaga, also called swede. Rutabagas were the workhorse winter vegetable of your grandparents' generation. A cross between cabbage and turnip, this rugged root was built to endure long winters. Thick-skinned, nutrient-dense, and slow to spoil, rutabagas filled countless root cellars across rural America. During both World Wars, the government encouraged families to grow rutabagas for victory gardens because they produced huge yields and stored for months. In many homes, this vegetable replaced potatoes when supplies ran low. Its mellow flavor, similar to a sweetened turnip, made it a flexible ingredient for soups, mashes, and roasts. But rutabagas were not just food, they were survival insurance. Outdoor temperatures could drop below zero, snow could bury fields, and still rutabagas remained diggable. Farmers often harvested them well into winter, knocking ice from the tops before pulling them free. Yet the vegetable's reputation suffered as soon as times improved. People associated rutabagas with hardship and poverty. As supermarkets grew and fresh produce became available year-round, rutabagas faded from dinner tables. For your grandparents, rutabagas were a dependable winter staple. For modern families, they have become a forgotten relic of resilience. Number 10, Scorzonera, black Salsify. Scorzonera may be the most overlooked winter vegetable in American history. It resembles a long black stick, hardly enticing, but it was prized across Europe for its remarkable endurance. Settlers brought it to America for one reason: it could be harvested even when the ground froze solid. Your grandparents grew Scorzonera because, unlike potatoes or carrots, it did not rot in storage. Instead, it stayed perfectly fresh right in the soil, insulated by the earth. Throughout harsh winters, families dug it up one root at a time, knowing they would always have access to fresh food. Its flavor is mild, slightly nutty, and often compared to artichokes. Homestead cooks used it in creamy soups, stews, gratins, and fritters. It was reliable, nutritious, and tolerant of neglect, a trait valued by families juggling hard farm labor with harsh winter realities. But Scorzonera required patience. The plants took 2 full seasons to mature, and modern gardeners preferred faster crops. Commercial farms had no interest in slow-growing vegetables, and Scorzonera quietly disappeared. Yet in your grandparents' day, Scorzonera was beloved for one reason: when winter took everything else, it remained. Number 9, Belgian endive, Witloof chicory. Belgian endive has one of the strangest stories in gardening history. It wasn't discovered, it was accidentally invented. In the 1800s, a Belgian farmer stored chicory roots in a dark cellar to dry, and weeks later noticed pale, tender heads sprouting from the tops. Those leaves became one of the most popular winter vegetables in Europe. Immigrants brought the technique to America, and your grandparents mastered it. Grow chicory in summer, dig the roots in fall, store them in darkness, and let winter transform them. With no sunlight, the leaves grew crisp, sweet, and slightly bitter, a welcome burst of freshness during dreary months. Endive became a prized winter salad ingredient, especially before grocery stores carried lettuce in January. Families used it as a substitute for greens they couldn't grow in snow or frost. It was nutritious, elegant, and dependable. But producing Belgian endive was labor-intensive, requiring dark storage, careful temperature control, and patience. As soon as grocery stores offered year-round lettuce and greens, families abandoned the old methods. Yet for your grandparents, Belgian endive was proof that even in the darkest months, something fresh could still grow. Winter lettuce sounds impossible today, but your grandparents grew varieties tough enough to shrug off frost. Winter density lettuce was one of the best. Compact, crisp, and unusually sweet, it survived cold snaps that devastated other greens. Before heated greenhouses and hydroponics, growing lettuce in winter was a luxury. That is why homesteaders treasured winter density. Its thick leaves acted like insulation, protecting the tender core even when temperatures dipped into the mid-20s. Families planted it in cold frames, under straw, or right beside the house foundation where warmth radiated from the walls. This lettuce extended the growing season by months, giving families fresh greens in November, December, and sometimes January. Its buttery flavor made salads, sandwiches, and winter meals more vibrant at a time when diets leaned heavily on root crops. But modern agriculture shifted toward delicate lettuces that valued appearance over resilience. Winter density was pushed out of seed catalogs, replaced by varieties grown in climate-controlled warehouses. Your grandparents grew it because it defied winter itself. Today, we barely remember it existed. Number 7. Miner's lettuce. Miner's lettuce isn't just a vegetable, it's history. Indigenous tribes relied on this green for centuries, and gold rush miners adopted it as a life-saving food source. It grows wild in cool, damp weather, often popping up when other crops fail. Your grandparents valued miner's lettuce because it provided fresh nutrition during late fall and early winter, long after summer greens disappeared. It seeded itself naturally, required no care, and came back year after year. Kids would run out to the field or the woods to pick handfuls of the tender, juicy leaves, a living vitamin supplement during nutrient-scarce months. High in vitamin C, it helped families ward off winter deficiencies like scurvy. Its mild flavor made it perfect for salads, sandwiches, and quick sautés. For homesteads on the edge of survival, miner's lettuce was free, abundant, and reliable. But as land development expanded and wild spaces vanished, miner's lettuce lost its place in American diets. Store-bought greens replaced wild foraging, and the plant became a botanical footnote. For your grandparents, though, miner's lettuce was a winter gift from nature, growing exactly when they needed it most. Mangelwurzel might have the strangest double life of any vegetable on this list. In Europe, it fed livestock. In America, during lean years, it fed people too. These giant beets, sometimes weighing 20 pounds, filled winter cellars and stomachs alike. Your grandparents grew Mangelwurzel because it was easy, dependable, and massively productive. Even in poor soil, it yielded hundreds of pounds per row. Families fed the greens to animals and stored the enormous roots for themselves. In tough winters, this vegetable was a lifesaver. During the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and the Great Depression, Mangelwurzel appeared in countless survival recipes. Boiled, mashed, stewed, or roasted, it kept hunger from creeping in when nothing else grew. It was not glamorous, but it was filling, and that mattered more than flavor in the dead of winter. But as agriculture industrialized, farmers turned to modern feeds, and families embraced tastier vegetables. Mangelwurzel became associated with poverty, hardship, and wartime rations. It vanished from American gardens almost entirely. Yet for your grandparents, this humble beet was insurance, a vegetable that kept entire families fed through the coldest months. Number 5. Claytonia, spring beauty, was the quiet wild green that helped families bridge the gap between winter and spring. Long before grocery stores carried year-round produce, homesteaders foraged Claytonia in woods, along fences, and near creeks, anywhere the snow melted first. Your grandparents prized Claytonia because it appeared just when supplies ran lowest. After months of eating roots, squashes, and cured foods, these delicate heart-shaped leaves were a fresh, revitalizing treat. Packed with vitamins, Claytonia helps supplement winter diets and restore energy during seasonal fatigue. The leaves had a mild, succulent flavor, and families used them raw in salads or lightly cooked in soups. For many rural children, Claytonia was the first fresh green of the year, a sign that winter's grip was finally loosening. Claytonia was also abundant during early winter in mild regions or sheltered areas. Its natural cold tolerance allowed it to survive frost, making it one of the few greens available during the coldest seasons. As farming shifted to commercial monocrops and wild foraging fell out of fashion, Claytonia faded from American memory. But for your grandparents, Claytonia was a wild winter blessing. Number 4. Kohlrabi, winter varieties. Kohlrabi looks like a vegetable from another planet, a pale bulb with leaves shooting out like antennas. But your grandparents saw it as one of the most dependable and long-lasting winter crops they could grow. Winter varieties of kohlrabi were bred specifically for cold storage. Once harvested, these tough bulbs could sit in cellars for 5 months without shriveling or spoiling. That made them invaluable before refrigeration. Their crisp, juicy flesh tasted like a cross between cabbage and apple, and families used them raw, roasted, boiled, or grated into salads. During harsh winters, kohlrabi provided crunch and freshness at a time when most meals were soft and starchy. Kohlrabi was also incredibly easy to grow. It resisted pests, tolerated frost, and matured quickly. For busy homesteaders juggling animals, children, and daily chores, kohlrabi was a low-maintenance guarantee of winter food. But modern supermarkets rarely carried it. Consumers gravitated toward familiar vegetables, and kohlrabi's odd appearance scared off new generations. Your grandparents knew better. To them, kohlrabi was the winter vegetable that never let them down. Number 3. Winter squash, Hubbard and buttercup. Long before butternut and acorn squash dominated grocery aisles, winter families relied on heirloom varieties like Hubbard and buttercup. These thick-skinned giants were built for long-term storage, lasting up to a full year in cool, dry cellars. Your grandparents grew them because they were calorie-dense, versatile, and nearly indestructible. One squash could feed a family for days. Their sweet, rich flesh powered pioneers through frigid months when fresh food was scarce. Hubbards, with their massive blue-green skins, were famously tough. People used hatchets to break them open. Buttercup squash, smaller but deeply flavorful, cooked into silky stews and pies. Together, they formed the backbone of winter cooking. The real magic came from their long storage life. While potatoes rotted and apples shrank, winter squash held steady. They provided essential vitamins that families desperately needed during the darkest months. Today, most households never see these varieties. Commercial farms replaced them with smaller, fast-growing squash, and the old heirlooms slipped away. But in your grandparents' time, these squash were not just vegetables. They were a winter survival strategy. Number 2. Jerusalem artichokes, known as sunchokes, were the ultimate winter insurance crop. These rugged tubers grew like weeds, survived droughts, ignored frost, and produced enormous yields with almost no attention. Once planted, they returned every year, sometimes too enthusiastically. Your grandparents relied on sunchokes because they could be left underground all winter. When food supplies dwindled, they simply dug up what they needed. The tubers stayed crisp and sweet even after repeated freezes. High in inulin, they were nutritious and filling, though sometimes gassy. Families roasted them, mashed them, and added them to soups. During the Great Depression, sunchokes became a quiet safety net for rural families struggling to stretch meals. But their aggressive spreading nature made homeowners abandon them. One forgotten tuber could turn an entire yard into a sun-choked jungle. Still, for your grandparents, Jerusalem artichokes weren't a nuisance. They were security. Number 1. Storage cabbage, Danish ballhead variety. Storage cabbage was the king of winter vegetables. Danish ballhead, the most famous variety, produced dense, heavy heads wrapped in thick leaves designed to outlast the cold. These cabbages were grown explicitly for winter use, not for summer slaws or fresh salads. Your grandparents harvested them in late fall and stacked them in root cellars where they lasted for months. Some families wrapped each head in newspaper or hung them from cellar rafters. No matter how they stored them, cabbage remained crisp and nutritious well into spring. It was cheap, dependable, and packed with vitamins families desperately needed during the cold season. From sauerkraut to stews, cabbage fed entire households on a shoestring budget. Immigrant communities especially relied on it. Sauerkraut was not just a condiment, it was vital winter preservation before refrigerators existed. But as grocery stores offered endless choices year-round, storage cabbage lost its throne. Sweeter, softer, prettier varieties replaced it. The rugged winter kings faded into obscurity. Yet in your grandparents' world, storage cabbage was the vegetable that endured when everything else failed. These 15 forgotten winter vegetables weren't just food. They were survival, tradition, and family history buried in the snow. If you want to reclaim the gardening wisdom your grandparents lived by, hit subscribe and leave a comment telling which vegetable you want me to cover next. Together, we'll bring these lost crops back into the light.